Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Richmond International Raceway as it plays host to race 17 of the second season of the G-Force Vintage Clothing Cup Series. Here with the 87 cars getting ready to race in the Virginia 175 here this evening. And we are getting set to see what short track racing we're going to have here tonight as we draw closer to the end of the schedule. Seth Cole alongside of Anthony McCurry. Anthony, obviously some home turf for you here tonight here in Virginia. What are these drivers going to be looking forward to here in these upcoming 175 circuits?
Richmond's an odd track. It's not quite a half mile. It's not quite a mile. It's literally in between. It's a 3/4 mile circuit, a D-shaped 3/4 mile circuit. Lots of room to run at this racetrack. We've come here before in this series earlier in the season. That was a day race. Tonight, it'll be much different. Track temps are going to be cooler. These cars have had a couple of physics updates to them, so these are going to be a little bit more stable. So get ready for some door-to-door action around Richmond. I'm excited to see what these drivers have to put on a show tonight.
Got a number of former winners up here towards the front of the field. Shane Terrian, who picked up his first Cup Series win of his career a couple of weeks ago at Michigan, lines up alongside of Hank Steinmiller, who comes into this race the current points leader, as well as winning about 4 or 5 weeks ago at Daytona. In row 2, you got Gerald Campbell, the most recent winner when he took the checkered flag last week at Bristol. So back-to-back short tracks, does that give Campbell an advantage here tonight, do you think?
It certainly does help when you have the momentum coming off of a short track and you go right into another one. And the travel day for these drivers was not very long. About 5 hours away is the Bristol Motor Speedway. So these drivers, especially for Campbell and Steinmiller and the like, the drivers that are running high in the standings, they know that they need to have a good run tonight. But yeah, Campbell coming into this race definitely going to have some momentum on his shoulders. And a lot of drivers behind him are going to have some fire under them as well, such as Cooper Johnson, who comes into this race second in the standings, and alongside him is going to be Christopher Morse Jr. He lines up third in the standings, did not have a very good Bristol at all, ended up a bit in a poorly way as he fell to the back of the field. We'll have to see how he does tonight on a recovery drive.
Christopher Morse Jr. and Hank Steinmiller come into this race, the highest finishing in previous Richmond races, both with a runner-up finish, but neither have won at this track as we are underway in the Virginia 175 at Richmond. We may go 3 wide into turn 1. Campbell's taking a peek.
Campbell was not wasting any time. 3 wide, Hank Steinmiller on the outside, trying to get the power down, and he does. Out of turn 2, going down the back straightaway. Looks like he does have the advantage to the inside, though. Our pole sitter, Shane Terrian, to the bottom.
Bringing out the stars and stripes at the 4th place driver there, the 14 of Cooper Johnson. He's going to move on by Seth Harrelson. 2nd place still under contest. It's going to be Terrian on the inside, Campbell on the top side, with Steinmiller leading them into 1.
And behind them, they single file out until you get back to Christopher Morse Jr., which is going the wrong direction. At this point, it's been passed by Harrelson and Green, now under fire from Jake Hounshell, Chad Wilson, and Jackson McLaren, and the like. In front, still side by side, Terrian Campbell. This battle not going away anytime soon, and Steinmiller, the points leader, is loving every minute of it.
These drivers, when practice started earlier on today, it was in the mid-afternoon, late evening conditions, and we were told that the track started gaining more and more grip the further behind those mountains that sun started to set. Now with the lights on, obviously grip levels at an optimum for these drivers. That might be why we're seeing them as aggressive as we are in these early portions of this race.
And with the physics update that this car took on midway through the season, these cars, and the drivers have mentioned it, that they are much easier to drive. They feel a lot more planted when they go around the turns, which is something that if you watch the series early on, you'll notice that the drivers in this race, they are not struggling so much for grip on corner exit as they were earlier in the season. Now, obviously, that was a day race as well, but given that fact, they're able to go door-to-door with each other a little bit easier, and I think we touched on it in a race previously, a couple of weeks ago, in fact, that some of these drivers might be a little more confident in their ability to go door-to-door, maybe try to battle a little bit harder than they were without the fear of having the car get thrown away.
Looking back from the 2 of 2000 Xfinity Series champion Jeff Green, back to the defending champion of this series, Christopher Morse Jr., as now Cooper Johnson under fire from Green. Green will move into 4th. Johnson now looks to driver's left, and there's the 3, the Intimidator black and silver Goodwrench Chevrolet Lumina of Christopher Morse Jr. looking for a spot inside the top 5. He may take that and complete the pass by the time they get to turn 4. Now, I mentioned the fact that Christopher Morse Jr. and Hank Steinmiller, both of them have runner-up finishes here at Richmond. None of the drivers in the field here tonight have won in this series at this racetrack. Why? Because Blaine Atkin, who is not in the field here tonight, won last year's race here at Richmond and the Richmond visit earlier on this season. So we will have a brand new winner here at Richmond tonight.
And there's going to a lot of be hungry drivers that are looking for that first win at Richmond right now. Steinmiller and Tyrion have kind of pulled away. They're in a bit of a battle themselves going into turn one, then back to Campbell, Green, Morse, and Johnson. Everyone, like you said, in the field with that shot of winning this. And it's a long way to go for these drivers in order to get to the finish of the race. But we are still, you can bet that they're making up strategies in their head, knowing that a strategy tonight could win you everything. We saw some strategy play out at Bristol where everyone was kind of off on different strategies as far as tires were concerned. So have to see if that carries over into this race as well. Given the fact that these tracks are similar in length, the Richmond is obviously a little longer and a lot slower around the turns than Bristol was, but you can still use some of the strategy that you had at that race going into this one, as tires are a premium at this track as well.
You talk about tires, you have to wonder just how much of the tires are being used up by Jeff Green. He has picked up 4 spots since the drop of the green flag, from 7th now up to 3rd, about a second and a half off the bumper of this battle, potentially for the lead. Shane Tyrion has reeled Hank Steinmiller back in. The two are separated by less than half a car length.
And I want to bet that Tyrion's probably biding his time, not wanting to push the issue right now, not any real threat of losing second place, and Jeff Green has now gotten into 3rd place. A bit of a tear trying to make it back up to these two in front, but not battling entirely too heavy in the early stages of the race as they come through turn 4 across to the timing line. Then everything, they still continue to open the gap over Green, although Green is starting to close in ever so slightly lap after lap, the gap about 2 seconds, and then there's a battle between Morse and Campbell for make that 4th place, is Campbell to the inside this time around. And if you're Campbell coming into this race, we mentioned it off or at the beginning of the program, off the heels of a win, his maiden win in this series. Not only does he have the momentum, but he's got to be feeling a little bit, I don't know, he's got to be feeling a little bit anxious, but also in a good position, because you come off your the first win, and now you're kind of everyone's eyeing you as someone that is documented good at these short tracks. Do you have a bit of more of a target on your back than you did previously, or is everything kind of the same as the weeks go on?
I think Campbell had a target on his back even at the beginning of the season. I mean, last year he went to victory lane a total of, I believe it was 3 times, and that was during the second half of that entire season. So even with limited starts, he was able to find victory lane, and kind of surprised me. It took him as long as it did to be a multi-time winner here on the season, and I think he kind of alluded to that last week as well, that he's had really good runs. He just hasn't been able to capitalize on the finishes. Right now, though, definitely a driver to keep an eye on, because yes, we are nearing the end of the season, but there are still quite a number of tracks that we still have to go to. And Campbell, while he sits 7th in the points, he's only 227 points out with the point system that they use here, the classic point system. Cautions out. I'll get to that in a moment. Robert Kenny has gone around the Tabasco machine off of turn 2.
I believe might have been a solo spin. No one else looks like they've been involved in this one, as he's gotten away cleanly. Car looks pretty well, despite the fact that he was facing the wrong way just a moment ago. Take a look and see what happened to put us under yellow, and I do believe it might have been a non-induced solo spin.
Yes, it was. Wow, man. He almost had the thing saved, then almost counter-steered up into the wall. Fortunately, that second snap around avoided any further contact with the outside safer barrier. Nice job there by Bo Caro in the 42 to slow up in time to not get involved in that as well.
Indeed, that was a couple of drivers back there with some good heads-up driving, and good heads-up driving on the part of Robert Kenny. He was heading straight for the wall and was able to get it woed down just enough time. And at Richmond, you kind of have the ability to do that, as you're going with the modern cars. You're only pulling maybe 135, 140 going into turn 1. So these cars with a little bit harder out of the turns, and you're not really going that fast down the straightaway. So plenty of time to get it woed down, so a good piece of driving on the part of Robert Kenny as well.
Had a couple of drivers electing to come to pit road, including the driver that was running second at the time that caution came out. Shane Tyrion going to give up a lot of spots to come down pit road, and Looks like it might have possibly been just a 2-tire stop for the 38. Chad Wilson, Robert Kenny, Matthew Rodriguez, Mike Tellier, and it looks like also Peyton Hamlet on pit road. Hamlet might have gotten the wall at some point in this race because it looks like they're doing a little bit of repair on the right side of his machine.
He will get out and for the safety truck pulls through, so he will not go a lap down. Good news for the 91 of Hamlet. Hamlet's been making he's made a lot of starts, but recently we haven't seen him start in the series much as of late. Not really sure if he's we've seen him at all the super speedways and now tonight at Richmond. So it's nice to see that 91 pulling around the racetrack as everyone lining up for what is going to be still a couple pacing laps on the back straightaway at the moment. But Steinmiller now leads after he was in the lead before the yellow came out. Now Jeff Green lines up in second after Shane Tyrion has come down pit road. Gerald Campbell, Christopher Morris Jr., and Cooper Johnson will line up top 5 as we are on lap 18, about to be 19 out of 175. A long way to go still, and that might be why that Tyrion decided to come down pit road now to try and see what he could do and really stretch the length of those tires. Maybe a little bit of strategy for later in the race when maybe tires will be a little bit more crucial than they are right now.
I actually just found out all those drivers that I mentioned, for the most part, when they came down, fuel only. So they gave up the track position. They did not take and put on an extra set of Goodyears. They actually just came down and topped off the fuel tanks. So everybody, for the most part, still going to be on equal footing with the rubber they have underneath them. Some of them, though, if we go into a long green flag run, will be able to stretch it a little bit further than others.
And that could come into big play later. Remember, we've seen some races come down to fuel strategy in this series so far, so wouldn't be surprised to see another one come down to that again. Green flag back in the air, lap 20 of 175. Steinmiller not wasting any time on the restart. Neither is Gerald Campbell, getting to the inside of Jeff Green, and a commanding pass on the inside through 1 and 2 out on the back straight. Going down into turn 3, try right on the bumper of Steinmiller is the 31, going through turn 4 on the way out into the tri-oval, and all settle in line. A little bit of courtesy driving at the early stages.
Yeah, I kept my eye on that 31 because he was lining up on the inside of row 2, and at the initial start of this race, Campbell started third and took him 3 wide into turn 1 on the very first lap. But maybe with the older tires, not as confident in making a move like that as he was with those fresher tires. As we look back here at the battle for 6th, that's Cooper Johnson, the 14, Jake Hounshell in the 02. Real quick, want to go back to the point I made before we had that caution come out in the case of Gerald Campbell. He's still very much in the running for this championship, still mathematically in the hunt. Right now, it's looking like it could be about maybe a 7-horse race for this championship, depending on what happens in these remaining races on the schedule. Steinmiller, Cooper Johnson, Christopher Morris Jr., they're all separated by less than 70 points, so obviously they're all in the hunt. Jake Hounshell, minus 113 in 4th. Jason Hounshell, I think, still has a shot, 189 points back. Gerald Campbell, as we already mentioned, I think Seth Harrelson still has a shot as well, 8th in points, 239 points back. Now, one driver that is up inside the top 8 in points, but looks like maybe bowing out of this championship battle, is John Whitendorf. And you folks will recall that about 6 weeks ago, we were talking about him as the points leader and maybe as the favorite to win this championship. Well, the last couple of weeks, we've not seen him on track. Work schedule has gotten in the way, and we basically heard that it's sounding like he may show up to maybe a couple of races here before season's end, but he will not finish out the rest of the season. So for the most part, unfortunately, John Whitendorf will not be in the championship picture. So right now, maybe 7 drivers will battle it out for said championship here down the home stretch.
That's a tough break for John Whitendorf, knowing that he had the momentum on his side. He had a lot of momentum going into most of these races. Had the points lead at one point, had a win on the season. I think a couple wins actually on the season. So a bit of a heartbreak if you're John Whitendorf and if you're a fan of John Whitendorf, but completely understand the situation and glad that he's decided to choose to choose something that is probably a little bit more important at the time. And this is important for all these drivers. They want to win a championship, and it's certainly being in a position that you can has got to be a little bit heart-wrenching, but also you got to not overwork yourself sometimes. And glad to see that Whitendorf has made a decision that he's comfortable with, and we look forward to seeing him in other races, however. And as we run speaking of Whitendorf, some drivers that were battling alongside Whitendorf for the championship lead earlier in the season are running pretty well right now, as Christopher Morse Jr. now gets up into third place. The defending champion coming into this season. He won last season in a pretty dominating performance late in the season. In fact, so dominating that when he got to Atlanta, he basically just had to finish the race, and that's why he won the championship this season. A bit harder for the 3 team as he comes into this race, as Seth mentioned, third in the standings. Still plenty of chances to make up those positions, and he is only a few points back, given the old point system, able to do that. There's some smoke on the front straightaway. It's probably the 34 that spun around. He's a bit slow going down the back straightaway, but still within a shot when we get to Atlanta. Do you think that Christopher Morse, knowing that he is the defending champion, he came in with a bit of a target on his back at the beginning of the season, now knowing that he's in a pretty good spot and making it back to the points lead, albeit a bit of a battle between Steinmiller, Johnson, and possibly Jake Hounshell even. What's the strategy going into these next few races, knowing that Atlanta is coming up soon, and there's not a whole lot of tracks left on the season that Christopher Morse has said that he is kind of well at as far as skill goes?
Yeah, what he needs is he needs the scales to kind of tip opposite of what they've done the last few weeks. The last couple of weeks, or the last couple of months, what it's been for Christopher Morse Jr. is he's had good runs. But then Hank Steinmiller and Cooper Johnson, they finish up in the same vicinity, so he doesn't gain a whole lot of points. And then the races where he has heartbreak, Steinmiller and Johnson get stellar runs, and he loses ground. So he kind of needs the scales to tip, as I said, in the direction where he has a good run, and the 63 and the 14 run into issues. Of course, last week at Bristol, Christopher Morse Jr. had a good run going, but had a mechanical problem. His wheel ended up breaking on him mid-race, so he finished way down the running order. Those kind of things he cannot afford. And obviously, as you alluded to, he's the defending champion, so he's been here before. Maybe not necessarily in this situation where he is chasing down the leader rather than trying to run away from the rest of the competition, as we got a car that binned it into those barrels there at the entrance of pit road. I think that was Robert Kenny.
Robert Kenny was, I believe, the driver that spun down onto the front straightaway, and that's why we saw the smoke, the plume of smoke, and he's gotten onto pit road, had to teleport that car. Undoubtedly very wounded at this stage, and most likely that will take him out of the running completely, as he will stay on pit road, possibly trying to get the car fixed, might try to get back out on track, but that's more than likely day done for the 34 team.
A break there for Robert Kenny. That orange car almost blended in with those yellow-orange barrels there. I almost didn't see him at first, but then realized there wasn't a barrel there, that it was a car, and he is going to more than likely finish 18th here in this evening's race. Take a look back here. This is 7th place battle. Shane Terrian, who restarted back in 13th, up 6 spots since the restart. And remember, again, as we mentioned, all those drivers, as he gets a little squirrely off of 4, but all those drivers came to pit road fuel only, did not take on tires. So this forward progress is being done by Shane Terrian on the same tires as the drivers around him.
And that's incredible. The fact that he's been able to make up this many positions, given the fact that he doesn't have any fresh tires. And when we get to a cycle of stops, he'll be able to come down pit road under pretty green conditions, not having to contend with a whole lot of other race cars around him. We were talking about in another broadcast earlier this week of how powerful an undercut can be. And this is a bit of an extreme undercut, but I have to see if it plays out the way that he's hoping it will. He's not too far back away from the leader. The gap to the leader about 4.5 seconds, so hasn't gotten completely out of touch, and the pit delta here that's not really great. It's something around 17, 18 seconds, I believe, if you're under just the pace. By the time you add tires and fuel, it'll be somewhere around close to 23, 24 seconds, maybe even more than that. We'll call it a safe 28 to 30 seconds the pit delta is, so that is a lot of time to spend down on pit road, and that's a lot of time that if you're on the racetrack with some clean air, you can make up some pretty fast laps, albeit the tires a bit worn, but still, clean racetrack equals faster laps, as he's not in the best of ways at the minute with 3 cars in front of him, Hounshell, Harrelson, and Johnson making up that trio.
Yeah, things are really wadded up from 5th place on back, about 5 drivers all right there in the same zip code, Johnson, Harrelson, Hounshell, the aforementioned Terrian, and also the 7 of Jackson McLaren. That's back to the 9th position. And oh man, again, a big slide there for Shane Terrian in the 38. Obviously, the tires are wearing down, and we're seeing that even so with the lap times. Most of these drivers, the initial start of this race, their fastest lap somewhere in the 23.4 to 23.7 bracket. There is not a single car out there that is running any higher than about a low 25 at this point in time. So obviously, the tires are kicking in. They're having to approach these corners a lot slower, and I think in the case of Shane Terrian there, they're having to be a little bit more careful in how they ease onto the throttle on corner exit.
Especially out of turn 4 specifically, you think you can carry more speed out of that turn because the way that the turn kind of eases into the front stretch, it's a bit daunting and a bit enticing to try and get onto the throttle a little bit early, but a lot of these drivers will say that if you get onto the throttle a little bit too early, that wall on the outside is surprisingly close to the corner exit. It doesn't look it when you're coming out of turn 4, so if you get onto a little bit too early, you'll have a lot of oversteer and end up heading in, or make that understeer and heading into the outside wall. A number of drivers have done that in recent memory, and partially because, again, the power getting down kind of mistimes it. But so far, no one has, aside from the one driver, Robert Kenny, which unfortunately has retired from the race, that damage on his 34 machine terminal. So we won't see him back on track. But for the most part, all these drivers have been able to drive pretty cleanly. Tyrion, aside from that, as he got a little bit loose coming out of turn 2 that time. As they run, the gaps in the lead are massive. Hank Steinmiller has been able to get out to about a 2-second gap over Campbell, and there's about a 1-second gap back from Campbell to Morse, and about another 1 second back from Morse to Jeff Green. So at least for the top 4, they've kind of gotten in their own little worlds at the minute.
Campbell and Steinmiller, your first and second place drivers. Remember, they were the two that pretty much battled it out for the victory last week at Bristol. Campbell using the undercut strategy and the fresh tires to get the lead from Steinmiller, and Steinmiller unable to close up the gap with the limited number of laps remaining. You've got to wonder if we end up seeing this race come down to pit strategy in the form of green flag pit stops, if anything from last week will be applied this week for Hank Steinmiller to make sure he doesn't get caught out twice.
And Steinmiller is definitely thinking about that one, and he's, like you said, he's been in this position before, 1 week ago, in fact, and the strategy might be in this time around, whenever Campbell pits, that you come down and pit, because right now Campbell being in second place, this is a all too familiar situation from back last week. So, like you alluded to, he does not want to have it happen again, and if he can continue to keep the strategy bit more kosher than it was last time around, he might be able to get in front of Campbell, or even try the undercut himself. He might be trying to pit early and catch Campbell out even.
Shane Terrian continuing to slowly, methodically work his way forward. Just made a pass moments ago on Seth Harrelson for 7th. Now looks for 6th on the 0-2 of Jake Hounshell. And I'm starting to see more and more drivers start to get loose there off of turn 4. I noticed Cooper Johnson actually decided to kind of roll the center a little bit more before getting on the throttle and actually exit low off of turn 4 to maybe try and get the car pointed and avoid that wheel spin. And Richmond's got that strange shape to it. The back stretch is basically a straightaway, but on the front stretch, it's a rounded straightaway, a rounded front stretch. And so therefore, when you're coming off turn 4, you're still turning the car to the left. That's, I think, a big reason why these drivers are having the back end want to step out on them, because they don't have the car pointed straight.
The front end of Richmond is akin to the back straightaway of Chicagoland. And Chicago, you don't really ever stop turning left at that track. It's a D-shaped oval that's more like proper oval. There's no straightaway, really. So the front stretch here is akin to that. And exactly, your point. It is the reason why. They keep turning left. And it's a pretty wide front straightaway. It's the widest short track that we go to this season. Aside from maybe North Wilkesboro is pretty thin. So this is about the widest short track that we're going to go to. It's about the same width as, say, a Charlotte or an Atlanta Motor Speedway. So plenty of room to make moves. But again, the power down, when your car, you put the power down, your car wants to go one direction, and that's usually up towards the wall. Or if you put too much power down, it's down to the inside of the racetrack. So it's all about a balancing act. And somebody who almost had that balancing act fall apart is Jake Hounshell. I don't know if you saw it a couple laps ago, but he was slow coming off of turn 4. I think he might have gotten a piece of the wall because that 02 has not gotten back up to speed since.
I was just about to bring up and ask if something had happened because I noticed him drop from 6th down to 9th on the telemetry. So that answers that question, as he'll now try and work his way back up towards the top 5, trying to hold off Jackson McLaren in the 7 machine. Battle starting to close up a little bit further towards the front of the field. Jeff Green, little by little, is losing ground to Cooper Johnson. So that's a brewing battle for 4th. And those two are actually starting to reel in Christopher Morse Jr. So we could have 3 drivers battling for that final spot inside the podium here within the next couple of laps.
Cooper Johnson has been able to really make his long run game exceed as far as the way that he's been able to drive these cars as the tires wear down. Every time that we see a long run happen, it's always the same adage that Cooper Johnson will start kind of far back away from the leaders and then all of a sudden finds his way up amongst the leaders late in a run. So again, doing the same thing this time around. We've got some smoke on the front straightaway and the 00 slow. Don't know if he was on pit road, was Jason Houndshow. We got a couple drivers coming down through on the apron. I believe they've made pit stops, but I wonder who the smoke belongs to as the 3 dives from pit road.
Might possibly have been from the 91 of Peyton Hamlet. Might have attempted to get onto pit road and was unable to. Jason Hounshell and Kevin Dinovich, they have made pit stops. And as you mentioned, here comes Christopher Morse Jr. now onto pit lane, the first of the leaders to start this cycle of green flag pit stops. Now, bear in mind, we're going to see a number of drivers come down pit road now, but all those drivers that decided to pit under our only caution so far, they could still go another 15, maybe 20 laps before they have to come to pit lane. Looking at guys like Shane Tyrion, Mike Tellier, Matthew Rodriguez, Chad Wilson, and others.
Yeah, and they will be able to not only stretch the gap, but they'll be able to do it in clean air. That's something that they haven't had the luxury of right now, is no one to challenge. And you wouldn't expect that this track would have a lot of aerodynamic problems when it comes to following a car, but it does a little bit because you get to some pretty considerable speeds going down the front and back straightaways. As Cooper Johnson decides it's his turn down onto pit lane, here also comes Seth Harrelson to make his first stop of the night. Undoubtedly, both of these drivers will be getting 4 tires of fuel. It's the matter of who gets onto pit road and off of pit road the quickest.
Hounshell also in the 0-2, and of course here at Richmond, being a short track, you're definitely going to lose at least 1 lap depending on where you pit in relation to where the leader is running. Most of these drivers are going to probably lose 2 laps to the race leader here, so you're running a risk with how early you pit, because yes, you might be able to take early advantage of fresh tires if everything cycles around, but you also run the risk that a caution could come out in the middle of these green flag pit stops and you get trapped off the lead lap. And as soon as I say that, commentator's curse must have struck, because caution is out. 2nd time today, and I think it was Campbell in the 31. It was.
Campbell lost control coming out of turn 2, and as you said it, I was watching it. He was wicked loose coming off of turn 2, and I think he might have made a stop prior to that and was trying to get back onto the racetrack and overcooked it going out onto the apron, and that is what caused a very lazy spin on the part of the 31.
Caution gonna fly, as Matthew Rodriguez was also spinning there out of turn 2 to avoid 31, who was facing 90 degrees the wrong way. And actually, Campbell had not been to pit road yet. He was out there on 57 lap old tires, which we are going to clearly see gave him no rear grip going into turn 1.
Not at all. Ends up just overdriving it into turn 1, and on fresher tires, he might have been able to get away with that maneuver, but this late in the run, absolutely no give in those tires, and they went straight around. He almost saved it, though. Give credit to the 31 crew, because I don't know if he's been into anything involving Formula Drift or not, but that could have been a contender for some pretty good drifting.
Had a number of drivers that almost lost it as well in relation to trying to avoid the 31. Peyton Hamlet was drifting it out of turn 2 there. And then obviously Matthew Rodriguez loops it around for a brief moment there as well. Did not hit anything. Most of those drivers, Hamlet as well as Matthew Rodriguez, were all running on the lead lap at the time, since they had not come to pit road. And now as pit lane is open, here come most of the drivers that had not already made their pit stops. I think when everything cycles around, pretty much the entirety of the drivers that had come to pit road under the period before the caution came out. I think they're all going to get to take the wave around here. If there are no wave rounds, I think Christopher Morse Jr. was in line for the free pass. So we're going to have to kind of wait for all the fallout of that to figure out who's running where. Obviously, a very untimely caution for a number of these drivers right in the middle of our first cycle of green flag pit stops.
It's going to be a lot confusing data for these drivers to figure out how to work through, as we could potentially have a lot of these drivers either a lap down or very close to being a lap down. As I hopefully they get to take the wave around, because as it stands right now, Hank Steinmiller is going to line up, I believe, 15th on the line, and he is the leader. So not an ideal situation you find yourself in if you're trying to make up progress. So we'll have to see if the drivers get to take a wave around or not. So far, survey says no. So we'll have to wait around. I think they have to go around a couple more laps. But Seth, that caution has caught out a lot of drivers, and you would think that some of these drivers might have taken the opportunity in order to maybe try an alternate strategy, but somebody whose strategy did work out is all those drivers that had pitted earlier. Tyrion, Taylor, and Rodriguez now line up second, third, fourth, right behind Hank Steinmiller. So that has played out heavily into their favor. Steinmiller yet to pit, I believe, as I don't think on my telemetry. Yeah, he has come down pit road. Okay, so he has done his stint. So Steinmiller still holds the lead of the race, but all those drivers that pitted earlier, look where they're running. Pretty well up in the top field.
Yeah, second on through sixth were drivers that were on pit lane back on lap 17, and there's your answer right there. Drivers are not able to take the wave around, and so therefore, Christopher Morse Jr., Jeff Green, Jackson McLaren, Jason Hounshell, James Goshen, they will all be trapped one lap down. Seth Harrelson, Cooper Johnson, Jake Hounshell, and Kevin Dinovich, they're going to be trapped 2 laps down to the race leader here for this restart. And obviously, for guys like Morse, who came into this race third in points, Cooper Johnson, who came in second in points, this is huge. They're going to have to use these next 110 plus laps to be able to get themselves back at least into contention to get onto the lead lap, so that way they can at least try and stop the bleeding, spudging the bleeding there between themselves and the current race leader, current points leader, Hank Steinmiller, who will be leading us to green this next time by.
He will indeed be leading us under our green flag very moment in the next few moments. The way they run right now, Steinmiller, Tyrion, Taylor, Wilson, Rodriguez, that's your top 5. Then Bo Caro, Gerald Campbell, who managed to stay on the lead lap. So not too much damage done to the 31 team. Peyton Hamlet also now on the lead lap in 8th place. Everyone else a lap down or more. Morse, Green, McLaren, Hounshell, Goshen, Harrelson, Johnson, the other Hounshell, and Dinovich. All of those drivers multiple laps down. Harrelson on down through 17th. So we get ready to go back to green. Green flag back in the air, and Steinmiller not waiting around.
And there was a stack up back there as well. Chad Wilson in the 12 did not get going. Almost got ran over by Gerald Campbell. They are going to settle it out going into turn 1. Just to confirm, there are no wave rounds, but there are lucky dogs. Peyton Hamlet was the free pass car under this most recent yellow flag. As top 3, all single file going into turn 3. They're stacked up, 5th place on back. Matthew Rodriguez, Seth Harrelson, Chad Wilson, almost 3 wide off the final corner for that position.
How about Matthew Rodriguez up there holding his own on the outside line? First time in these cars, he said earlier in the night. So doing pretty well in a top 5 position, and has kept the car very clean so far this race. Excited to see how he can finish the night out. As Chad Wilson to the bottom of the racetrack, he's got a deck lid full of the 07 of to make that Harrelson. Harrelson, one of those drivers, 2 laps down, so has to do double the work in order to get back into the hunt for the win. Currently, right now, going the right direction as he now puts down Matthew Rodriguez down, not a position, but down a couple places on the racetrack.
Yeah, for a couple of these guys, Harrelson, Johnson, Jake Hounshell, basically what they got to do is they got to race their way up there to the front, get one of those laps back the hard way, hope for a caution, and then hope for a free pass position later on in this race. Right now, that lucky dog position's under contest. 9th place, Christopher Morse Jr. looks back, and just a couple of car lengths back is Jeff Green. Both those drivers been very fast here tonight, as has Jackson McLaren, who's been up just on the outskirts of the top 5. Those 3 all lined up nose to tail right now, battling for the free pass position, hoping that a caution will come out with them out in front of the rest of the drivers on the same lap as them, as we've had a lead change. Shane Tyrion gets around Hank Steinmiller. He's going to go to the point for the first time here tonight. He has yet to lead a lap here this evening at Richmond. That's about to change.
And everyone up in this lead group of cars is on the same tire strategy now, so no one with a disadvantage. Tyrion, a very commanding lead at the moment as he's pulled out about a 2 to 3 car length advantage over Steinmiller. Now Mike Tellier trying to make his wave up in here. And Tellier started pretty far back on the field. I think he started around the 15th, 16th position. Now finds his number 97 Red Bull machine up towards the front of the field, and showing considerable speed given the fact that he started so far back.
A great run for him, and obviously for a number of these guys, Tyrion in the lead, Tellier in 3rd, Caro in 4th, Chad Wilson in 5th. These are drivers that all played the strategy game, came to pit road under our first caution back on lap 17, were able to stay out when that most recent caution came out, gained the track position that way, and now hoping that they can maintain it for the remainder of this race as we close in on 100 laps remaining. For Hank Steinmiller, now that you've got some of your competition, 2nd and 3rd in points, trapped off the lead lap, I gotta wonder if this train changes up his strategy in any way, shape, or form. Earlier on in this race, we saw him go hard. He was laying down the fastest lap times out there in clean air, trying to manage the gap between himself and everybody else behind him. Now I almost wonder if he would go into tire conservation mode, just maintain his spot and try and keep himself in the running for this victory, continue to open up the points gap from himself back to Morse Jr. and Cooper Johnson.
I agree. I think that right now he's in a great position in order to make up championship points. Thinking about big picture, he's already got a win this season. Doesn't need to get anything else so far. It can an opportunity to extend the points lead given the fact that we're so far into the season. We only have a handful of races to go after this one tonight. It's been a long season for these drivers, but as we got earlier or later into the season, it's become clear that a lot of these drivers that are in the top 5 have gotten here based on consistency, and Hank Steinmiller is number 1 at top of the food chain as far as consistency goes. You could also throw Cooper Johnson there as well. He's been relatively, in fact, more than relatively consistent. He's been consistently top 10 and top 5 this entire season. So name of the game for Steinmiller, definitely increase the points lead, because right now the closest competitor is a lap down running in 9th place.
Big bunch of cars back here in this group. Only 2 of them at this point in time are running on the lead lap. That would be the 12 of Chad Wilson and the 42 of Bo Caro. They're battling for 5th. You've got drivers that are still battling for position, though, around them. Seth Harlson, Cooper Johnson, Jake Hounshaw, that all made their way by. They're currently running 2 laps down in 14th, 15th, and 16th. So in the case of Cooper Johnson, every position matters for him, because every position he gains could be anywhere from 3 to 5 points that he would then at least gain on Hank Steinmiller. And coming down to that season finale in Atlanta, those 3 to 5 points could be very, very important in terms of the championship battle.
Indeed they could. We've seen championships across the board, and every series come down to minuscule amount of points sometimes coming down to tiebreakers. So every point that you can get is towards the championship, and no different tonight for Cooper Johnson. Other drivers that are also looking to try and get somewhere closer and capitalize on the situation they're in, although not many of them running right now, or they are running, but still in kind of similar positions. Right behind Cooper Johnson, you've got Jake Hounshaw. We haven't talked much about Hounshaw's championship efforts. He is running 4th place in the standings, in a quiet 4th place, not really making a lot of noise this season. We've mentioned him several times, and he's always towards the front of the field, always consistently running in the top 10. Has not put together a winning run as of yet, but he has been consistent enough to get him inside the top 5 in the standings, in a pretty commanding spot in 4th place. In fact, the guy behind him is his brother, Jason Hounshaw, aside from John Whitendorf, which is immediately behind him, but he'll fall down the standings after tonight's race as well. But Jake and Jason will be in 4th and 5th, respectively, in the championship standings if nothing changes on the outcome tonight. So, got to give credit to the 2 Houndshells for staying this far up in the championship.
Yeah, they are only 2 drivers inside of the top 8 that have not gone to victory lane yet this season. And back to your point there about Jake Hounshill as well, we talk about consistency winning championships. Yeah, he's been very consistent. 5 top 5s on the season, 13 top 10s, which is tied for the most amongst drivers this season. But right now, mired back in the 16th position, 2 laps down, needs a lot of good stuff to happen to him here in the second half of this race, which is fast approaching. We saw it there. The battle for the lead and the exchange for the top spot. Hank Steinmiller going back to the point around Shane Tyrion, and Mike Tellier's been kind of looking on in that 3rd position, keeping these 2 within close proximity. He might be thinking about getting up here and making it a 3-man fight for the top spot.
Wouldn't put it past him. Tellier's been in positions like this before in other series. This is his first run tonight in the G-Force Vintage Cup Series, so a good showing for him. I believe this is his also first time running in the 87s as well, so a fast learner is Mike Tellier, been able to keep pace with these 2 more experienced drivers, and yeah, definitely within striking distance. If any of the 2 in front of him make a mistake, he will definitely be there in order to take the position away. Back to 4th place, you've got Bo Caro running in 4th. Now, Caro has made several starts so far this season. He hasn't made every start, but he's been in quite a few of them. And tonight, running very well, a 4th place position. Right now, running, almost running into the wall was the 42 of Bo Caro, but running very well. Not entirely on the pace with the leaders, but a very solid 4th place. And give credit also to Chad Wilson, who also almost took a trip to the outside barrier, finds himself running in 5th place.
I think he got the outside barrier to Chad Wilson. Saw a lot of sparks coming off of that right rear quarter panel off of turn 2, and you got to wonder how that's going to affect a race car here. Obviously, these machines, they're pretty sturdy, pretty fortified, but when you consider the fact that you want to have the best handling race car possible with a track that has the heavy braking zones like Richmond does, you got to wonder if that's going to affect him here for the long run. And these drivers do not have any faster pairs to be able to fall back on either outside of super speedways. Wilson, though, going to continue in the 5th position, and see Gerald Campbell now up into 6th place. We focused just a moment ago on Jeff Green. We'll drop back to him again because just moments ago, we had a pass for 9th place. Now, why is that important? Because now Jeff Green moves into the free pass spot should we get a caution. About 3 car lengths back is his nearest competition, 10th place Christopher Morse Jr. So Jeff Green right now hoping that he can see a yellow flag come out and save his race, as he had some really strong pace early on in this one. And right now currently trapped 1 lap down. I'm looking right now here too, Anthony, at the number of laps run. Most of the drivers we saw that stayed out under the first caution, they all started coming to pit road somewhere around lap 45 to 50. So we're about maybe halfway through a tire run here, but with that caution coming out right in the middle of green flag pit stops, you've got to think that it's got these guys now on pins and needles of, when do I come down pit road? Do I want to stretch it as far as possible now, try and avoid that situation happening again, or do they just kind of pull themselves up by the bootstraps and say, well, you know what? It's the strategy I had coming in. I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to pit early and take advantage of the tires again and just hope a caution doesn't come out.
Yeah, it certainly will affect the way that these drivers handle the next couple of pit cycles, rather. And some of these drivers that pitted earlier, such as Shane Thierry and Mike Tellier, they all came down pit road that last time by. So all these leaders now on the same cycle. As far as pitting early, I would imagine that Tyrion might try that strategy again. It certainly worked in his favor. Remember, he fell down quite a ways back through the pack, had to fight his way up through the top 10, and eventually ended up in an 8th place position, or make that a 6th place position before the aforementioned yellow came out. And then by then he was able to stay out, jump through the field, and end up running now in a 2nd place spot. So certainly he would be one of those drivers, I feel, that if anybody was going to try that strategy again, it would be him. Mike Tellier, another one of those drivers that might try the strategy, given the fact that he was on a similar one to Tyrion and didn't have to have that threat of being caught out a lap down when the yellow flag came out. Now, if you're Hank Steinmiller, you didn't do that. You stayed out and kept the lead of the race. Do you stay out again and keep the lead of the race if that caution comes out again? That's a question that we'll have to ask later if he does end up getting if he gets a podium position, then we can ask him later. But I feel like if you come down pit road now, everything's relatively calm. You might be able to make it work, but certainly that caution coming out, it does. It throws out these drivers a bit for a loop. And whoa, speaking of loop, Tellier almost was going around in one.
Yeah, we caught that just in the back of that camera shot down the back straightaway. Nice save by him. We saw a save earlier on by Peyton Hamlet out of turn 2. And going back to your point, though, you know, back during that first green flag run there with the green flag pit stops, things looked relatively calm, and the old tires of Gerald Campbell just didn't have that rear grip going into the corner with a solo car spin. So being spread out doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be absolutely no chance for a yellow flag coming out. So that's obviously the chess match these drivers have to do in their head here, trying to figure out if it's worth coming down pit road earlier than the opponents and taking advantage of the faster lap times with the fresh Goodyears. We are now halfway through the Virginia 175 here at Richmond for the G-Force Vintage Clothing Cup Series. Hank Steinmiller trying to hold off Shane Tyrion for his second win on the season. We're going to step aside for a quick commercial break. You're not going to miss a thing. We're going to go FRN side by side.
Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and team. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and team. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and team. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and T. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world.
We continue to run under the green flag here at Richmond International Raceway. The Virginia 175 here for the G-Force Vintage Clothing Cup Series. Kept an eye on the 42 of Bo Caro for a good portion of that side-by-side as he's been slipping and sliding. The possibility of a yellow flag coming out here as we're closing in on our second round of green flag pit stops. Somewhere in the next 5 to 10 laps, be expecting to see some of these guys ducking for pit road.
And it will most likely, if not completely, be for tires, as the drivers earlier in the race had some struggles with tires, as we saw Tellier was one of Tellier and Therian at the beginning of the end of the life cycle for these tires. Bit of slipping and sliding coming out of turn 4 and turn 2, respectively. With that stop coming up soon, it puts you in an interesting position, Seth.
It definitely does.
Not quite to the end of the race, though. Oh, you're not quite enough fuel to the end of the race, I should say.
I don't think you can make it to the end of the race unless you save quite a bit because projected, granted they had a couple of pace laps to be able to work with the first caution for those drivers that did not come down pit road under that first yellow, but even then, I mean, we're looking at, roughly 55, maybe 57 max laps that you can go. That would be another 6 laps these drivers would have to go. That puts you 62 laps away from the finish. So it's close. It's really close for these drivers. I think it's really going to come down to if you're willing to kind of split this race into 2 segments. The run that you've just been on and the run to the finish. If you can stretch it halfway between where you restarted this race and where you make this pit stop, it could be your final pit stop of the day, but man, your tires are going to be shreds by the time you take that checkered flag.
And we saw earlier, speaking of tires coming to shreds, it plays into the point that Tyrion was one of those drivers that was on pins and needles going around the racetrack. He was on a really long stint when he came down pit road for the last time by in order to get fresh rubber. So do you risk it? If you get a big enough lead, if you're able to get away from all the drivers behind you, then you might be at a shot of making it all the way doing that. But again, it's so risky when you go out that long and you're basically hoping that the car doesn't break free. We saw what happened to Campbell earlier. He was driving by himself and ended up just a little bit over driving turn 1 and lost the rear end of the car on the mid turn through into turn 2. So you don't want to run that risk late in the race, but it's kind of a situation where you're going to lose more time by coming down pit road again. Do you risk the pit road delta, or do you risk losing time or possibly spinning on the racetrack?
And we saw Jason Hounshell hit pit road. He was who I expect to be one of the first to hit pit lane as he had the oldest tires of anybody on that restart. Other drivers that I think are going to be on pit lane not too far from now would include Christopher Morse Jr., Jeff Green, Cooper Johnson, Seth Harrelson. Looks like the 85 of James Goshen, I believe. No, correction, that's the 12 of Chad Wilson, who was on the lead lap. He has just ducked onto pit road.
And with that, green flag stops have begun. So, Wilson into his box. What did he do? He's going to hit his marks. It's probably going to be a no tire stop. There they go. They're jacking the right side of the car up. So, getting ready for a 4-tire stop. Now, if you're these drivers that are a lap down, what do? Do you come down pit road on cycle and hope that you can jump through the field, or do you want to risk losing another position? I think that answers the question. Jeff Green, the first out of our lap machines to come down pit road.
Yeah, and I think, going back to the case of what we saw with Gerald Campbell, you can't run the risk of trying to stay out there longer and longer on the old tires because the rear grip is obviously going away for a number of these guys. So just cut your losses, keep your pace the same as the race leaders, and continue to try and find opportunities to get that caution flag and try and be the first car 1 lap down, as Jeff Green gave up, I believe it was the 10th position to come down pit lane. Jackson McLaren in the 7 has now ducked onto pit road. Looks like Chad Wilson, the only one of our lead lap cars to hit pit lane so far. So we'll have to see how this translates to him, where he would cycle out. He was running last car on the lead lap before he ducked onto pit road. As a matter of fact, he was in danger of going a lap down because he was battling for a number of laps with Bo Caro, who just got lapped on track by leader Hank Steinmiller.
We're definitely going to make up some ground with the fresher tires, but he will be struggling for tire grip late in the... Oh, there's the yellow.
And it's Campbell again in the 31, this time over in the middle of 1 and 2. Third caution of the day. Second time it happens in the middle of green flag pit stops, and same driver.
And the benefit now, though, is that there were hardly any cars on pit road the time of the yellow. We had the 02 on pit road of Houndshell again, so he's going to be kicking himself that he came down pit road that early. The 38 also was on pit road. That is Shane Tyrion was on pit road under that exchange. So interestingly enough, that might have some consequences, but make that Gerald Campbell, this is not what he wanted to have happen after the good luck he had last time out.
Huge heads-up call by Shane Tyrion. He was on pit road, but with the caution coming out, he passed right through pit lane, did not stop in his stall, and will remain on the lead lap. So that is calling an audible on the fly and being aware of what's going on around you. We go back and take a look at what happened to Campbell, and this is almost deja vu all over again. Into the corner with a rather shallow entry. This time, though, hard into the outside wall, and he had 57 lap old tires with his first spin, this time 56 lap old tires, so apparently that car does not handle well when those tires are worn down, and that's a lot of damage sustained on that MTV machine. Does not look like Campbell will be going for 2 in a row in the last 2 weeks.
Absolutely not. Was able to save the car the last time, not so lucky this time, and there's considerable amount of rubber that's built up on the inside and the outside of the racetrack, so maybe got a little piece of it going inside and just looped it around. He was battling with the doubles with the, well, make that the 07 of Harrelson. Not sure if that was a good call to make that entry so shallow, but unfortunately his day is done. Bo Caro will cycle around the leader.
Yeah, now Bo Caro's actually the lucky dog. He was the first car 1 lap down behind Gerald Campbell, with Campbell bringing out the caution. Caro's going to get the lucky dog. He was going to come to pit road that last lap, but that was the lap that the pit road was open for lead lap machines. He's going to come to pit road this time by picking up the lead lap position and will be starting at the tail end of the field. He can now make his pit stop. A couple other drivers look like they're coming down to top off the fuel tank once again as well.
You've got Green on pit road. You have got Tellier on pit road, which he was running 3rd place and still is running 3rd place. So coming down pit road is Tellier. He didn't make a stop earlier on, so this is technically his green flag stop, or his scheduled stop. Hank Steinmiller did make a stop. He is still the lead of the race. And Peyton Hamlet is on pit road. We have a bit of a jumbled up top 5 at the moment. It'll all work itself out. Matthew Rodriguez also on pit road. Shane Tyrion is out on the racetrack. But here's the catch. He's 1 lap down now. That did have some pretty significant effects. Even though he went through his pit stall, he still found himself a lap down.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure this one out here with Shane Tyrion, because with the timing of that yellow flag, if he did not stop in his pit stall, I don't see how he would have lost a lap. Hank Steinmiller coming around to get the caution. The only thing I can possibly think of was, did the caution come out before Shane Tyrion hit the commitment line? And did he, in turn, come down a closed pit road? That's the only thing I could possibly think of that would have him trapped a lap down, because he did not take service when he came down pit lane when that yellow flag was flying. So we'll see if we can update on that or not, but as you pointed out, though, he is now trapped 1 lap down, and while the caution flag has not been the best friend of a lot of drivers in the field, it has been the best friend of Hank Steinmiller, because there have been a lot of guys that have been breathing down his neck for the race lead that all of a sudden then get bit by the caution on their pit strategies.
Indeed, and Tyrion, one of those drivers recently that is going to feel that effect. Other drivers are going to be a little bit worse off. Seth Harlson now 2 laps down to the leader. Cooper Johnson still 2 laps down, but finds himself at the head of the 2-lap down field. All these other drivers, Chad Wilson, he was running up in the top 6 on the lead lap. Guess where he runs now? 11th, 2 laps down. You've got Jackson McLaren, another lap lost. You've got Gerald Campbell, who brought out the yellow, now finds himself a very wounded race car, will most likely be out of this one. Jake Hounshell again, he's down 2 laps down. Jason Hounshell, we're talking about both of them. They're now 2 laps down. Hank Steinmiller, though, Mike Tellier, no such problem. They're back under green. It's Steinmiller, Tellier, and Matthew Rodriguez that lines up 3rd place.
And he's going to go for 2nd into turn 1. Ooh, got a little tight there. May have overdriven it just a tad. Mike Tellier having to move up, give him some room there as they'll continue to battle for 2nd. And now, Mike Tellier crosses high to low. He looks for the top spot, moves up almost into the driver's side door of Hank Steinmiller, but Tellier goes to the point.
There might have been slight contact, if any contact at all, but that was a brilliant move on the part of the 97 to get to the lead of the race, and now putting back a few car lengths back to it. Now a 2nd place battle between the 63 and the 57 of Rodriguez. Steinmiller now with the gap. Peyton Hamlet, extreme low side of the race. That's not Peyton Hamlet. That is... Who is that?
Cooper Johnson, I believe.
Cooper Johnson It is. Cooper Johnson trying to get one of his laps back, almost ducked down to the inside of Matthew Rodriguez.
Johnson 2 laps down. The first driver 2 laps down in 8th place. Right now, only 2 drivers are on the 1 lap down mark, trying to battle for the free pass position. Christopher Morse Jr. and Shane Tyrion. On the previous restart, we had 8 drivers on the lead lap. When they took the green this time, there were only 5 drivers on the lead lap, including the lucky dog, Bo Caro, who had to restart tail end of the field. Right now, it's really only a 3-horse race up here at the front as Mike Tellier starts to open up some distance between himself and Hank Steinmiller. It's now been open to almost a full second.
And it's not closing at all. Whatever that happened between the exchange earlier between himself and Steinmiller has done some damage to the 63. Of all the drivers that are running on the racetrack, there's only 2 drivers that are even 1 lap down, and that would be Christopher Morse Jr. and Shane Tyrion. Both of these drivers had fast cars earlier in the race. Tyrion at one point was battling for the lead of the race and was leading at one point in this race. Now finds himself 7th, 1 lap down. And everyone else behind, multiple laps down, all the way down to 12th is where you find James Goshen, who is our last driver, 2 laps down. And then Jackson McLaren, Jake, and Jason Hounshell make up drivers numbered 3 laps down. So they have a lot of work in order to get back up into a lead lap position. And especially for the 2 Hounshells, they came into this race, Jake 4th and Jason 6th, a net 5th in the standings. So not good point stays for these 2.
So we watch this battle for the lucky dog spot. 6th position, Morse Jr. and Shane Terry. And you're right, the caution flag has not been kind to a number of drivers here tonight. However, we've only seen it wave for 3 times here this evening. All 3 cautions have been for solo car incidents. A spin on lap 17 by Robert Kenny, and then 2 solo car spins in the middle of green flag pit stops by Gerald Campbell. So for the most part, these drivers have done a heck of a job keeping this race green. And the thing that kind of stands out to me now is we've been under 2 very long green flag runs, and we are now at less than 50 to go. So for a number of these guys that were hoping for cautions to put them back in the lead lap, time is running out for that saving grace to happen and get themselves back into competition. And just quickly, an update on Gerald Campbell. Still on pit road, still getting damage repaired, currently scored 15 laps down. He will finish probably 16th place here tonight as Kevin Dinovich retired about 50 laps ago, and Robert Kenny was the first retiree out of the race. They will be 17th and 18th in tonight's finishing results.
Rodriguez almost found company with the outside wall as he went up awful high out of turn 2, now on the front straightaway, losing not positions but losing track position to a number of lap and 2 lap down cars. Now Tyrion goes to the inside, Christopher Morse Jr. short following him as well, now trying to get to the inside to try to bid for one of his laps back, or his only lap back. But that's still a long way to go before you get to Mike Tellier. So at this point now, with Rodriguez falling back into the clutches of some lap down traffic, It's really only a 2-car fight. And speaking of fight, they are fighting for the lead of the race. Tellier on Stein, or make that Steinmiller on Tellier, as Tellier leads Steinmiller in the hunt.
And obviously still a long ways to go in this race, but kind of speculating towards the end of this thing, or even maybe in the next couple of laps. Already pointed out, this is Mike Tellier's first start in the series. Hank Steinmiller got a taste of victory lane a few weeks ago at Daytona, but says he wants to win more races, trying to pick up the championship. You gotta wonder when he gets to the 97, how aggressive is he going to be to try and get the top spot? How aggressive is Mike Tellier going to be to try to keep the 63 in his rearview mirror?
Looks like that Steinmiller is better on long runs, obviously with the more experience in these cars, knowing how to handle the longer run, but definitely I think Steinmiller is going to try and quickly take the lead of the race, and it didn't look like there was much of a challenge that Tellier put on. Almost a gifted first place position, is now battling back on the high side, but that high side is only going to work for so long, as now Steinmiller still battling side by side. Tellier using that outside line to his advantage, not quite cleared yet, is the 63, but now through turn 1 and 2, surely will be clear, and a commanding lead now for Steinmiller.
Yeah, Tellier had about a second lead between himself and Steinmiller. It only took about 10 laps for Steinmiller to get back around the 97, and with that pass we saw there, two things I noticed. One, Mike Tellier just could not seem to be able to hook the bottom while Hank Steinmiller was able to. Plus, Hank Steinmiller seemed to be able to get his car pointed a lot better from the center of the corner off, get that straightaway speed, and that's where he gained a lot of his time. Eventually was able to make a relatively easy pass on Mike Tellier and go back to the point. Again, Hank Steinmiller got his first win of the season 4 weeks ago, and he said that there's a lot of wins that he let get away. Felt that last week was a win that he let get away at Bristol. You know he's out for some redemption here tonight, looking for his first multi-win season of his career, and again, continue to grow his points gap over a number of drivers that have been bitten by the caution flag here tonight. Christopher Morse Jr. mired back in 7th, Cooper Johnson mired back in 8th, so it could be a big points night for the 63 if he can close out the deal.
Indeed, it will be, going coast to coast as well, as he started front row on the grid. And at Richmond, it's kind of interesting way to do it at, because again, this track is wide enough to make some moves done. He hasn't really been able, or hasn't had to make a lot of aggressive moves. They didn't even have an aggressive move on Mike Tellier. If you're Mike Tellier, you're looking to win your debut race in this series. So you have two different contrasting storylines going into this race for both of these drivers. We've gone over what's at stake for Hank Steinmiller. Now for Mike Tellier. First start in this car ever in this series. Started at the back of the pack. Did not get caught out under the cautions that brought out pit road dramas that happened earlier in the race, both times in fact. Has been able to maintain pace with these leaders ever since getting into this position, and now finds himself in a position to win the whole thing. So what do you do? Do you try to go for your win aggressively, or do you concede to somebody who's in a championship fight?
Well, the thing he's got to do first is maintain the tires underneath him. Because I'm looking at the numbers right now. Here's the good news. These drivers can make it to the checkered flag on what they've got in the tank. Here's the bad news. Their tires are going to be anywhere from 56 to 58 laps old. Remember, 56 laps and 57 laps were the number of cycles on Gerald Campbell's tires when he had those 2 solo spins. So these things are going to be a handful in the final 5 laps.
Indeed they are, and the benefit for Tellier and Steinmiller is that they have no competition right now. It's only the two of them on the lead lap battling this way up in the field. We have a couple other drivers on the lead lap, but they are miles back in comparison. Rodriguez holding down 3rd place, about 5 seconds back to 2nd place, about 5.5 back to our leader. Peyton Hamlet right behind him has found his way up to a challenging position to try and get a top 3. And if I remember correctly, if Hamlet gets this pass on Rodriguez, whoa, speaking of, I don't know if you caught that or not, but he almost lost it coming out of turn 4. That could have been our caution.
And he was able to save it. Yeah, we kind of missed it. We saw him go really low there out of 4. So that basically follows that he was out of shape. Was doing a lot of working to get up there to the back bumper of Rodriguez for 3rd place. But right now, Peyton Hamlet coming into this race, only 1 top 10 in the season. That's his only top 5 as well. So right now trying to get his second top 5 of the season here in the Vintage Cup Series.
And if I remember correctly, he hasn't finished on the podium any at all this season. So this would
No,
be
I
his
believe
first
not.
So this would be his first podium as well, if he can indeed get a pass done on Rodriguez. We got to talk about Matthew Rodriguez for a second, because he finds himself again in the position of coming into this race not having any prior experience to the 87s in this league. So just kind of holding on and trying to survive in this race, but has done significantly well. Was able to time the pit strategy in order to avoid being caught on pit road during the yellow flags, and now finds himself battling for a third place, although not much battling going on as Hamlin almost lost it going out of turn 2. But how would it be for Rodriguez to come in this race and take a third place and get on the podium in his first start in the Vintage Cup Series, and a fellow FRN colleague too, a little bit more special?
Yeah, but it's funny because we were talking to him pre-race, and he said, I have very little experience with these cars. I don't think I've got the pace. And I said, oh, so that means you're going to do well, right? So, if he ends up finishing on the podium, I'm going to bring that statement back to his remembrance. As right now, he has been able to really play the strategy and have the cautions fall exactly the way he needs them to, en route maybe for his first podium finish in this series in, I believe, his second start. I believe he made a start last season as well in the Vintage Cup Series. Now, we look at this pass right here. This is not for position, but this could be very important because I'm watching the lap times of one Shane Tyrion. He just got around second place Mike Tellier. He is running anywhere from a tenth to a tenth and a half faster than race leader Hank Steinmiller. He's only one lap down. He could race his way back onto the lead lap. And if we end up having a caution come out somewhere after he passes the 63, he would not have to start at the tail end of the field for an upcoming restart. He'd be able to line up with all the rest of the drivers on the lead lap, not have to worry about lap down traffic. So that's obviously, I think, what's on his mind right now. That also would move Christopher Morse Jr. into the free pass position. So right now, I think Christopher Morse Jr. is the biggest Shane Tyrion fan out there, hoping he gets up there and gets himself raced back onto the lead lap.
Indeed, because right now, Morse does not have the pace in order to keep up with Tyrion. He's actually got caught behind Cooper Johnson. Now, these two are also battling, but not on the same lap. More or less battling for second place in the standings, because if everything holds right now, Steinmiller would keep the points lead. In fact, extend his points lead, and Morse would catch up to Cooper Johnson in the standings. Now, they're running 8th and 7th on the racetrack, respectively. Cooper Johnson 8th, Morse 9th, or Morse 7th. So advantage to Morse, but only slightly. I don't think it would be enough to take second place, but certainly letting Johnson know that he's in this fight for the championship, and that's a bit of a statement pass. It wasn't for a position, wasn't for anything specific, just to let Cooper know that I'm still challenging you. Just because I'm a lap ahead of you, or I'm 2 laps down on you, I'm still going to pass you on the racetrack, more or less as a bit of a gotcha.
I'm still confident that these drivers can make it the rest of the way on what they've got in the tank. We just saw the 12 of Chad Wilson on pit road. I believe the reason he's hitting pit lane, remember, he was one of the earlier drivers to hit pit road under the second cycle of green flag pit stops. He did not come to pit road under the caution flag, and so therefore he was about 3 to 4 laps shorter on fuel than everybody else. So while I think most of these guys are borderline, maybe 1 or 2 laps to the good, I think he could have maybe been somewhere around 1 or 2 laps short.
And he's almost got around, and he has got around. Coming out of turn 4 has Chad Wilson just pitted, and the caution falls, and it couldn't have come at a worse time for Shane Tyrion had not yet gotten back onto the lead lap.
Well, the good news for Shane Tyrion is he will be the free pass machine. But as you're alluding to, he's going to have to start tail end of the field. That's behind lead lap and lap down machines alike. He is going to have about maybe 16, 17 laps to work with, depending on when we get back green. But our last 2 cautions have been due to a driver on old tires spinning out. This one was due to a driver on the fresh slick spinning out over in turn 3.
Cold tires is what catches Wilson out going into 3. He overcooks it going in, and I don't think he quite realized just how much grip was lost on a fresh set of tires. You got to get these tires warmed up to temp. Bins it into turn 3 and just overdrove the turn, and that is what causes the spin. Luckily, he did not hit anything on the way into turn 4.
I took a quick look back at his pit stop. He actually went with right sides only. So bear in mind, he's got right sides that are fresh. He's got left sides that are about nearly 40 laps old. That's a huge difference in tire temperatures going into a corner.
Yeah, and when you're going in that fast, trying to get the car to rotate through the turn, I think he just got caught out with how fast he entered and didn't quite get it woed up. He almost saved it too. If he hadn't hit the apron, I think that he would have been able to save it if he had stayed up on the banking. But luckily, no one was in anywhere close proximity, so didn't take anybody else out, although the leaders were coming up very quickly, but able to get it going the right direction.
Yeah, I was noticing that as well. Hank Steinmiller, Mike Tellier, as well as Shane Tyrion, they were all coming out of turn 4 when he was getting that car rewrited and turned back in the right direction. And so Shane Tyrion had to stay out the extra lap being the lucky dog. He's on pit road this time, which will turn the race lead over to Hank Steinmiller. Mike Tellier will be lining up second, Matthew Rodriguez third, Peyton Hamlet and Bo Caro. They will be completing the top 5. And then Shane Tyrion will be the last car on the lead lap in the 6th position. That'll put Christopher Morse Jr., the only car 1 lap down in 7th place. So should we see another caution between now and the finish, he would then be able to get himself back on the lead lap. And then everybody else on down, they are -2 or more. So they're hoping for a lot of attrition here in the final 20 laps or so to keep their hopes of getting back on the lead lap alive. But not really a whole lot of laps to be able to work with when you consider the fact we run about 3 to 4 under each caution period.
Indeed we have, and with the laps ticking down, those drivers, the only drivers realistically that could make it back onto the lead lap at this stage is probably going to be Morse. 1 lap down only. Everyone behind, tough mountain to climb, but still battling for pretty high up in the running. Cooper Johnson, who is 2 laps down, and 8th, Jeff Green, Seth Harrelson, every driver on down through until you get to Chad Wilson is 2 laps down. So still battling on the racetrack for those positions. And if you're Cooper Johnson right now, you're in damage salvage mode or damage mitigation mode. It's been a pretty bad race for you, not because you've done anything wrong, just because of the circumstances you found yourself in. Right now, you're just in anything that you can to stop the bleeding of this race, and hopefully you can go into our next race without having too much of a deficit onto our points leader.
Let's see, this is what these guys like Morris Jr. and Cooper Johnson had to do. They had to make the best out of a bad situation, and they've managed to do that because we were talking about them both multiple laps down outside of the top 10 about 50 laps ago. Now they're up inside of the top 10 in 7th and 8th, so they're at least going to have somewhat decent points-paying finishes here tonight. The bad news for them, though, is the guy they're trying to reel in for the points lead, Hank Steinmiller. He's been out in front for a majority of this race. Still, it's a good run for them, but they need Hank Steinmiller to have an Achilles heel at some point, and doesn't look like he has any thoughts about that, as he's going to lead us back to the green flag. 16 laps to go in the Virginia 175.
Notice how he jumped to the high side immediately after the restart, was able to get in front of the 97, not wasting any time cutting off the route that Tellier had. Right now, Rodriguez and Hamlet will battle side by side as Hamlet's found his way up into the lead group, and on the round, the high side is going to take a position, and the 42 is around.
We were on board with Shane Tyrion and saw that 42 drift up to the top side and get loose. Loops that thing around. Shane Tyrion was a man on a mission right there, as he was 3 wide into 1, 3 wide into 3, was making those moves work. But Bo Caro's spin is going to bring out the caution for the 5th time here tonight. Christopher Morse Jr. will get back on the lead lap as a result of this, and just on board there with Tyrion, didn't look like there was any contact made. Looked like he just drifted up there into a portion of the track where there was no grip.
As I've gone back and looked at it right now, there might have been slight contact between himself and Morse. I think that Caro came down. Morse was running all on the low side of the racetrack. I think they got a little bit of a bobble on the way in. That might have just been a racing deal, but the case is that the 42 lost control, went up onto the ground or up into the rubber, and then got blasted into the side by the 12 of Wilson and got pushed going down the front straightaway.
I'll have to take a look here at another angle, and the thing I'm wondering is, yeah, I think that just answered my question. With the 3 making the contact, and initiating that wreck. Would Morse Jr. be in line for the lucky dog? Answer is no, he would not. He would be responsible for the caution, and Cooper Johnson gets the free pass, so he now will be moving up to 1 lap down. We're going to take an aerial view of this and just kind of see, did one come up and one come down with both wanting the same piece of real estate or not?
It's a very, very close call to make, and one that it's so close. I don't think that Morse really came up the racetrack. I don't think Caro came down the racetrack either. I think they were both in the same lane trying to go for a position. And I actually, more look at it,
I think the 3 got loose. The 3 was squirrely. I think he was trying to gather the thing up.
I think that he overcooked it going into turn 1 or make that turn 3. Or maybe he didn't quite see Caro come down the racetrack. I don't think he knew that he was up there. And then when he saw him, it was too late. He overcorrected, ended up sliding up into the 42, and then the 42 overcorrected, got up into the gravel patch, and then into the side. A bit of a meeting of the mind, locking up, going down the front straightaway. It's a racing deal. I don't think you could blame any of them. It's just 2 drivers going for the same piece of real estate.
Chad Wilson's on pit road. We saw he got some front end damage out of that. And yeah, to your point, if you go back and you actually look coming off of turn 2, the 42 Bocaro kind of pinches the 3 of Christopher Morse Jr. down towards the inside, down that back straightaway. And I don't think that Morse Jr. knew if the 42 was going to enter shallow or not. Didn't realize where the braking point would be, how much room he was going to have to give the 42. And we saw with the aerial view, that back end was starting to come around on him. He was wiggling into turn 3, and it just started drifting up. It didn't drift up a bunch, but it drifted up just enough that he made contact with the left rear quarter panel of Bocaro and sent him up the racetrack. So Cooper Johnson is getting the free pass. He and Christopher Morse Jr. will battle for the free pass here should we get another caution in these final 10 laps or so. Steinmiller the leader, Tellier in second, Peyton Hamlet now up to third, Matthew Rodriguez in fourth. Bocaro still remained on the lead lap as he's going to restart in the 5th position. Actually, correction, he'll restart 6th. Shane Tyrion is actually going to move up into the 5th spot, and that caution was a big break for him because even though he was slicing and dicing his way through the field, this now puts him up here with all the lead lap cars. Only 4 drivers between him and that clean air out in front.
And with that being said, a chance for the win comes with that bit of bonus as we get ready to sign them up, or line them up rather, for our restart. Lap 166 of 175, under 10 laps to go. Make that 10 laps exactly as we're back to green. Steinmiller not wasting any time. Peyton Hamlet now moves into second place. Shane Tyrion not wasting any time either as he's forced his way around Tellier and Rodriguez. Now going for 3rd place on Hamlet as Hamlet battles for 2nd to the inside of Hamlet. Not wasting time.
Big drive into turn 3. Deep corner for Shane Tyrion, trying to close up on Peyton Hamlet for 2nd place. They were 3 wide mid-pack there around a bunch of lap machines. I saw Jackson McLaren, Jeff Green back in that group, all trying to battle for positions, albeit not on the lead lap at this point in time. Top 4, all single file down the back straightaway. Green might have gotten the wall off of 2.
Give credit to Peyton Hamlet not giving way, but now slides it too far into turn 3 and loses one, maybe losing 2 positions now as Tellier to the inside, gathering it back up. Hamlet falls back to 4th place, and this is now what Tellier needed, or make that Tyrion needed. Clean, relatively clean airs. Now he can run down our leader Steinmiller. Battle
for the win. Bocaro on the back straightaway. He's collected up Jason Hounshell. Caution will fly once again.
And this is big news for Christopher Morse Jr. He was in front of Cooper Johnson. Will get the free pass this time around. Has put his name back in the hunt for the lead.
Jason Hounshell, 3 laps down, now in the 15th position. Bocaro, 2nd straight incident he's been involved in, albeit still on the lead lap. Let's go back and take a look at what happened. Things were really wadded up in the midway portion of the pack, and the contact was made off the 2nd corner.
What happened here is I think that this time Caro was the one at fault. He went high on the racetrack. Not a whole lot of grip up there. The tire's not exactly new, but they're not in that critical range. But what happened is he got too high on the racetrack, tried to put the power down too early, might have gotten a bit of the rubber buildup on the top of the racetrack, tried to save it, and ended up getting run over by the 07, I think.
I thought it was the 02. We'll take a look at another angle here.
Yeah, make that the 02. I believe you're right.
Yeah, and oh no, you're right. It was not Houndshell. It was Harrelson in the 07.
Yeah,
don't believe my eyesight.
I mean, they're similar looking cars, especially when you're looking at it from an angle, but I think the correction was a bit too jarring. I don't think that Harrelson quite knew the speed difference that was happening, but then gets in the back and dumps him going down the back straightaway.
I'm going to ride on board here with the 00 of Jason Houndshell, who was just wrong place, wrong time, running his line on the inside, and unfortunately, 42 spins down into his lane, collects him up, and there's nothing but inside wall to the left. Pretty heavy contact with the left front of that machine. What was already a bad night for Jason Houndshell just turns worse as he sustains damage. Some pretty significant damage on the front end of that machine collected up with Bo Caro. And you talked about it, Christopher Morse Jr. with this caution coming out, going to get back on the lead lap. Now bear in mind, being the lucky dog, he has to start the tail end of the field. I'm not certain he can get up there and pass any of the lead lap machines here with how few laps we're going to have left. Lights are still on top the pace car, and this time by, we're going to be at 4 to go.
Indeed, we're going to potentially finish this race within regulation. We have one attempt at a green-white checker if you're new to the series. We run 87 Cup rules until we get to the end of the race, in which we will throw in a one attempt at a green-white checker to finish the race out, but more than likely we'll be able to get this one in regulation as the laps are winding down, but not too far. Steinmiller, Tyrion, Tellier, that is your top three. And on back through 4th, 5th, you got Hamlet, Rodriguez. Caro, despite the second spin, will still line up in 6th place. And now Christopher Morse Jr. on the lead lap in 7th. Cooper Johnson, Jeff Green, Seth Harrelson, that makes up your top 10. Johnson 1 lap down, Green and Harrelson 2 laps down respectively. Seth, we saw Tyrion make a charge. He's now into 2nd place. Never give up. That's the motto that a lot of these drivers use. Do you send it into turn 1?
Well, you're on the outside line. We have seen here tonight how that outside line, while it's not necessarily a passing lane, it can hold its ground for a couple of laps against the inside line. So, I mean, both of these drivers got a taste of victory lane for the first time this season. Shane Tyrion a couple of weeks ago, Hank Steinmiller about a month ago. I think that both of them are going to be very aggressive on this. And do you find it ironic? We've had a couple of drivers that have led 1 or 2 laps here tonight. Campbell led a couple of laps early on this race. A couple of drivers have led due to green flag pit stops. But the majority of the laps have been led by the drivers that are starting 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Is there any irony in that? I don't think so. The cream of the crop is rising to the top here with 2 to go.
Whoa! Someone did not get going. Tellier spinning it down the front straightaway at the restart. Did not get through the gear, spun the tire, no caution comes out. Still Green, Steinmiller up at the front, and now Hamlet to the inside of Tyrion.
Aiden Hamlet gonna try and battle with Tyrion for the runner-up spot. Sends it deep into turn 3. Hank Steinmiller's loving this as he scampers away. He will see the white flag. 1 lap to go in Richmond, Virginia.
Next flag ends the race. Caro finds himself into 4th place. Tyrion drives it in deep, tries to cut in front of the 91, and he does. Now, Hamlet almost lost it, and now Cooper Johnson loses it on the backstretch, but this all happens behind Hank Steinmiller as he'll come out of turn 4 and win a chaotic finish here at Richmond.
Hank Steinmiller started outside of the front row. Tyrion started on the pole. They will finish in reverse order with Steinmiller the winner here tonight. His 2nd win on the season. He will extend his points lead. Shane Tyrion drove it as deep as he possibly could into 3. Got to the back bumper of Steinmiller but could not get the power off. He'll finish in 2nd, and best finish of his career for Peyton Hamlet as he'll bring it home 3rd on the podium.
And Bo Caro has been spun around twice in the last 2 yellow flags we've had, finds himself finishing 4th place, and Matthew Rodriguez a stellar 5th place tonight as his first start of the night. This could not be better for Hank Steinmiller. He comes into this race the points leader. He is now not only going to extend his points lead, he's actually sharing a word right now with Johnson, who spun it coming out of turn 2 that last lap by, but now you extend your points lead going into our next race. You've got a massive lead over second place, which the new second place now is going to be Christopher Morse Jr. He's going to leapfrog up to second place if my math is correct. Now you're on autopilot. What you got to do now is do exactly what you did tonight, and you've got this championship wrapped up.
Well, I'm telling you what, we talked about it last week. It's kind of a quadfecta of short tracks. We ran Bristol last week, Richmond tonight, Dover next week, and in 2 weeks' time, we go back to Nashville. Obviously, Hank Steinmiller, a second place last week, a win here tonight. Loving the short tracks, so things are looking pretty good for him on the future of the schedule, as a la Alan Kulwicki going to do a Polish victory lap here for the Richmond fans. We're going to go back momentarily, take a look at the incidents there on that final lap. Christopher Morse Jr., he managed to finish in 6th. Mike Tellier, after his spin, finished 7th. Cooper Johnson had that spin, but he was the only car that was 1 lap down, so he still finished his 8th, with Jeff Green and Seth Harrelson completing the top 10 here tonight. But I'll tell you what, you're right. Autopilot there for Hank Steinmiller. Things just turning the right way for him all of a sudden after that win at Daytona. He just seems like he can't do anything wrong.
Yeah, it's been a string of great races for the 63 team, and it's only going to get better from here. Even if he has a bad race here and there, he's going to be able to keep this points lead. If he DNFs next week, I don't think he's going to be able to lose the points lead with how much he's been able to make up in this race alone. That win at Daytona that you mentioned, a big momentum boost, a confidence booster in the 63. Now, you mentioned before that he was really struggling and needed a win to really get this team, this program, to get into gear. He got the win and hasn't looked back since. Remember last season where we saw a late run charge by Christopher Morse Jr. He had a struggling first half of the season, then gets to the second half of the season and kicks into overdrive, winning a number of races in the second half of the season and then going on to win that championship. Are we potentially seeing the same thing happen with Hank Steinmiller, where he struggled early in the season, got a consistent amount of top 10s and top 5s, but never to be able to put together a winning run? Then at Daytona, gets the win, and now here at Richmond gets another win in a commanding fashion, and we have nothing but short tracks up until we get to Charlotte. I think it's going to be the same, or history repeating itself with a different driver.
Well, we are certainly going to be finding out. We were taking a look there at what happened to this 97 of Mike Tellier. Just based off of what I saw there, I'd hazard a guess that he might have missed a shift coming to that restart, because he got going and all of a sudden it stalled out and he had Matthew Rodriguez into the back of him, sending him into the infield grass. That's a tough break there for Mike, who could have very easily finished this race up inside of the top 3. We now take a look at the hard lick by Cooper Johnson off of turn number 2. This was on the final lap, and I thought he might have gotten a little bit of help, but nope. Back end just steps out on him. He noses it into the inside wall, but was able to limp that thing back to the start-finish line to finish in P8.
Yeah, that was a heartbreaker for Cooper Johnson, because he had the potential to make up, at least kind of mitigate the damage that was going to be done tonight, ever since falling down onto 2 laps. He made up another lap. He's not going to lose much of anything, as he was still going to finish in the 8th position, so didn't lose a position, but a bit of an insult to injury. He wanted to be battling up in the field with the rest of them for a good showing, but whew, Seth, that has been the most chaotic 2 laps at the end of a race I think I've ever seen, certainly at Richmond. It was absolutely stunning to watch these drivers wheel it around this racetrack. And if you're Shane Tyrion, this is good. This has been a good showing for him as well. He had to work immensely to get into the position he was in after starting on the front row, ended up falling back multiple laps down at one point, ended up finding his way back up into a position to even have a challenge at the win of the race, and then just barely lost out at the end. But the driver we need to talk about the most right now, Hank Steinmiller, obviously, but Peyton Hamlet, first podium on the season. What a drive by the 91.
Absolutely, and we're going to talk to him right now as he's standing by, finishing third place here tonight at Richmond, Virginia. Hey, Peyton, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the FRN booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got y'all. Sorry, I had to find my push to talk.
Well, man, what a drive for you here this evening. That car looked like it had a lot of fight in it. Looked like the driver had a lot of fight in him. Able to claw your way up there to third place after the chaos of that final restart. We know a lot of drivers had to play the timing of the cautions coming out. They fell in favor of you, but man, how good does it feel to get your best finish of the season here tonight at Richmond?
It feels pretty good, and it was kind of spooky how them cautions were working out for us, because every time they'd come out, I'd have like a lap of gas to go, and one of the last cautions right before that third long green flag run, I run out coming down the back straightaway, and I feel bad because I think Shane got a black flag for it, but he ended up getting a second. But man, it just fell into our hands. I wish we could have won. We felt like we could have won, but it was, we'll take a top 3 any day.
A strong showing tonight for the 91 team, and it wasn't an easy fight. Earlier in the race, we saw a lot of drama happen when the cautions were coming out. People were caught on pit road. You were able to stay out and have it fall onto your advantage. But I want to talk about how the cars handled tonight, because obviously from earlier in the season we were here, the cars handled much differently than they do tonight. How did the car feel tonight? I know that on long runs, it looked like you guys were struggling with a little bit of tire grip. How did the cars handle over time?
Well, at the beginning there, that first long green flag run, at first it felt great. And then as it went on about lap or 30 laps in, I was all over the place and knocked the wall down a couple times. But once I knocked that wall down a few times, come down pit road, got fresh tires, I was like, man, this thing is a rocket. So I think it just kind of, going back to the luck deal, knocking that wall down, tighten the car up, and it just gave it a ton of drive off. I could stab it and roll with it, and that's how we got up to the top 3. So.
Obviously we were talking about the fact that there's kind of a rash of short tracks being raced here in this month. Bristol last week, Richmond here tonight. We got Dover, the Monster Mile coming up next week. We've got Nashville to follow. Obviously, they're all 4 entirely different tracks, but is there anything that you're able to take from one short track and apply to another short track, especially when you've got such good momentum going into the next one?
Well, if there's anything I learned tonight, is that I just need to hit the wall just right if that car's a little loose. But for the most part, all short tracks are different, but at the same time, they're all the same. They all race the same. It's all tight. It's all packed up racing, single file. Sometimes, most times, it's double file. You just kind of have to pick and choose your way up. And I really wasn't wanting to start. I think we started 15th here tonight, and I was really scared about that. But we was able to get up through there, and I think we can take that and learn who we raced against and who cut us some slack, and put that on to the upcoming races, and just remember it and go from there.
Well, a lot of times at short tracks, it's all about strategy, and Peyton Hamlet played the strategy right here tonight. Third place finish at Richmond, Virginia. Peyton, we're going to give you the opportunity now for some thank you, sponsors, and shout-outs.
I'd like to thank the boys back at String Bean Enterprises, our virtual team here on iRacing. We do what we can. Got a good driver there, Stephen Chun. He helps me more than I know what. But he's a fine young man, and I think the world of him. Town and Country Ford here in Madison, Tennessee. Remax Homes. Shoot, I can't even think of them all. Fast Track Mortgage, all them guys on the car. We can't thank them enough.
Well, Peyton Hamlet gets his best finish of the season as he finishes third place here tonight in the Virginia 175 at Richmond International Raceway. Congratulations, Peyton. Job well done. Best of luck to you next week at Dover.
Thank you, fellas. We'll see you next time.
Well, he sent it into turn 3, got to the back bumper, but was not able to complete the pass. But what a dogfight to get back up to second place tonight for Shane Tyrion. Hey, Shane, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the FRN booth. You got us?
I got you.
Well, man, we just said it. Dogfight for you here tonight. That caution trapping you a lap down. You had to race to get yourself at least into position to get back in the lead lap. The caution falls. You fall to the back of the pack as the lucky dog. Catch another caution. You're up there with the lead lap cars. Had a shot there in that final restart. Bit of a topsy-turvy night for you. Talk us through it.
Yeah. First run wasn't too bad. Hank was definitely better on the long runs. I mean, it's my first time being here on a short track in these cars, but I took fuel only early. It looked like it could go a long run, and then when everyone was pitting, I was like, all right, this might play in my favor because I was only like 4 seconds behind Hank, I think. And then the caution came out, so I was like, oh, well, that scrapped that. So I was like, I just gotta get the lead. Got the lead, and then Hank just destroyed me in the long run. And then I was going to pit under green, and then Matt Robb was like, they're wrecking. Then they saved it. So then I quickly tried to dive on pit road, and the caution came out within inches before I got to the line. So then that happened. Then I missed my pit box when I came back around, and I had no fuel, so I couldn't reverse. I had to like wait a minute, and then I got chopped a lap down. It was very unfortunate. It kind of sucked, but cautions played out, and then I screwed up the last restart. I couldn't hear because Matt Rod and Mike Telly were yelling in the Discord because he missed a shift. So I could hear when I had to shift into fourth, and I lost just that amount of time. I couldn't get to Hank.
Yeah, you kind of answered every single question that I was going to ask you, but I do have one more that I was thinking about pretty much the entire race. But earlier in the race, you were among the drivers that came down a lot earlier to get some fuel. What was the thinking behind that? Was there a strategy that you were playing out that if the race had gone green for a long period of time would have played out later in the race? Because it was a strategy that I was thinking about, not taking tires but taking fuel. Talk us through that one.
Yeah, my idea was that they were gonna have to pit 3 times every like 50 to 55 laps, and I would have only had to pit 2 times on the green if it stayed on the green because we restarted on like lap 20. You can go like 56, 57 laps roughly. So I would have only had to pit twice on the green flag. So that was my idea. Never got to see how it would work, but yeah, that was my plan. I was hoping they would stay green. I only had to pit 1 less than them and probably get the win there, but didn't play out.
I mean, Shane, obviously we saw you pick up your first win of this series back at Michigan. Strong run for you here tonight. You mentioned the fact that not very much experience with these cars at short tracks, but now with one short track race under your belt, what's your thoughts about going to a couple more short tracks in the next couple of weeks? We got Dover next week, Nashville the following week.
I mean, if they handle like this, I was surprised. These things are like school buses, so I was really surprised that they turned here. So if they're not anything like that, that'd be fun. I mean, my worst finish in this league so far in this car is second, so I mean, I can't complain about that.
Absolutely. Well, a second place finish here tonight at Richmond for Shane Tyrion. And Shane, we're now going to give you the opportunity for some thank you sponsors and shout outs.
Yeah, I want to thank Chris for, letting me join. It's been fun. A lot more fun than I expected. It was a good showing tonight. And then Evil Controllers, you guys for broadcasting. I'm definitely going to go back because I saw you guys were on board with me on when I restarted in the back after I got my lucky dog. Me making those 3 wide passes. So I definitely want to see that from my onboard. So, yeah, thanks for you guys for broadcasting. I've been paying attention. You guys helped me a lot during the race because I don't know what everyone's doing.
Yeah, those 3 wides were crazy and a lot of fun to watch there with you driving it and making it stick on 2 different occasions there on the exact same lap. But Shane Tyrion brings it home second place here tonight in the Virginia 175 at Richmond. Congratulations, Shane, and best of luck next week at Dover. Maybe we'll see you in victory lane for the second time this season.
Hopefully.
And speaking of victory lane, we're going to go down there now. 2-time winner on the season, Hank Steinmiller, standing by. Hey, Hank, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Gotcha.
Well, my goodness, man, you are on fire. After getting that first win of the season at Daytona, you had that second place finish last week at Bristol. Kind of said you felt you let that one get away. Capitalize here tonight. Second win on the season here tonight in Richmond, Virginia. You extend the points lead as well. We got more short tracks coming up. How's the confidence level feeling knowing that this car and your ability to be able to get around these short tracks has been on par in the last 2 weeks?
We got the speed. I'm not a big short track guy, but it seems Richmond does match up with me, I guess. Dover, definitely I'm good on the concrete. I'm looking forward to that one. I think Bristol showed we got speed on the concrete too, so let that one go. Last year, Dover, we were pretty good, so I'm expecting to roll pretty well there, and then from there on out, I hope we got a pretty good points gap there that we can just maintain.
Throughout the race, I noticed that you were taking some incredibly shallow lines towards the end of the runs, especially with those last couple of restarts. But throughout the rest of the race, you were running extremely well and able to corner in and get the tire or get the power off the turns. But Tyrion challenged you pretty well in that last run. What were your thoughts on that last restart, trying to put the 38? Yeah, trying to put the 38 behind you.
Well, with 20 to go, I think when that, I don't know how many last cautions there were, but 20 to go when that caution stint started, I was hoping it would go green, and then I was just hoping we wouldn't get to a 5-lap shootout. The short speed was not quite there. The long speed is where we were killing everyone. So I did not want to see a 5-lap shootout. I wanted to see that last fuel run go to the end. I wanted to see the 20 laps go to the end. I wanted to see anything, but once they started wrecking, I wanted them to keep wrecking. Wreck before I get to turn one, no one will ever get to my bumper. So I was happy to see a little bit of racing behind me. That gave me a little bit of gap, and then I could just roll that last lap. I know he got close and tried to send it. He did a really good job. I was impressed that he got back there too, or back to my bumper too. But I was rolling, just making sure that I didn't overdrive a corner. It was real easy to spin on coming off the corner. Tires wouldn't stick very well. It was really tight getting in, so those shallow entries just gave me a little more confidence, and there was a little more security getting into the corner and letting it kind of diamond that come off of 2 there.
You know, basically the two main points, the main two deciding factors into how this whole race shaped out were the timing of those 2 yellow flags in the middle of the green flag pit stops. We saw a number of drivers that were up inside the top 5 get bitten by the timing of those cautions. Tyrion got bitten by it, Jeff Green, Gerald Campbell, Christopher Morris, Cooper Johnson. One driver that consistently was not hurt by those cautions was yourself. You kind of stretched it as far as you could go, it seemed, and those cautions falling into place allowed you to be able to pit while still in the lead lap. Was that the whole strategy, to stay out there the longest you possibly could, just in case a caution came out, not put yourself in a position where you'd have to battle to try to get back in the lead lap?
Yeah, first, I think Gerald, knowing he didn't have the speed tonight, since he knows I finished second to him all the time, I think he was the cause of the 2 of them at least. I think he was just trying to make me not win since he couldn't get to my bumper. It seemed like every time we get close to a pit stop, he'd just spin. But I know we were burning the right rears pretty good. The cardinal rule, or the cardinal sin on an iRacing, is pitting before your fuel's out, because something's going to happen 9 times out of 10 right as that pit window closes. So stay out as long as you can. Don't get trapped a lap down, especially at these short tracks. You'll go 2 laps down, and that's really what hurt a lot of guys. I know Seth and Cooper, they were coming out of the pits as I was coming by, so that put them 2 laps down. Chris had pit a little bit earlier, and he stayed 1 lap down. But yeah, short tracks especially, the time it takes for these cars to get fueled and tires on them, it's going to put you way back. So it's not like the new trucks and the Xfinity and Cup cars there, where you can only lose 1 lap and then fight for a lucky dog. It's very hurtful to pit early and a caution come out.
All right, so let's talk real quickly about that final lap, because it looked like with the 91 and 38 side by side, you were going to run away with this thing, and then all of a sudden, Shane Tyrion drives it deep into turn 3, got to your back bumper, but obviously wasn't able to get back to the throttle as soon as you were able to, and you were able to hold him off to get this checkered flag. But how difficult was it going into turn 3 to make sure you focused on your braking area and not look in your rearview mirror to see just how close that gap was closing up between you and the 38?
I'll be honest, I didn't look up until he was washing up the track from not kind of holding it down on 3. I know he had to wash up a little bit, so I rolled 1 and 2 really, really easy, and I didn't want to make any mistakes in 1 and 2. I knew I had the gap, so I rolled 1 and 2. I saw the gap coming off of 2, but I never looked going into 3. I was pretty confident I was going to get through 3, or to the middle of 3, and at least have the power down by the time he would get anywhere near me, because sending those things in there that hard, it's hard to make it stick, and it's hard to get back to the gas that quick to actually turn it through the corner. If you get back to the gas too hard, it's going to spin right out, especially coming up off that banking like that. Richmond's a very, very technical track with the it's not really elevation changes like you see at North Wilkesboro, but that banking chops off really, really quickly, especially coming out of 2. It's almost like the car's a boat going over a wave.
Well, some people say race wins will win you championships. Others say consistency will win you championships. You're doing both here in the Cup Series. Hank, congratulations on your second win on the season. We're now going to turn the microphone over to you for some Victory Lane. Thank you, sponsors and shoutouts.
Yeah, thank you guys for the broadcast. Thank you, Gerald, for trying to jinx my entire race for probably the last 50 laps. He's becoming a bit of a sore loser, so I'll put the show on for you guys now since he seems to be struggling at it lately. Thanks to my sponsor, Juicebox Pod, the team at Country Roads Motorsports, Cooper and Seth, now on board. So check the Juicebox guys out on Spotify. Thank you guys for the broadcast, and we'll do our best going forward.
Win number 2 on the season for Hank Steinmiller here tonight in Richmond, Virginia, in the Virginia 175 at Richmond International Raceway. He'll carry the points lead into Dover next week. Congratulations, Hank. Best of luck down the home stretch here. Some more short tracks coming up in the future.
Thank you. We'll hope to see you soon.
And so as Hank Steinmiller continues to celebrate down in Victory Lane, Anthony, I mean, can anybody stop Hank Steinmiller? I mean, we talked about the fact that, Christopher Morse Jr., Cooper Johnson, they struggled here tonight. It's looking more and more like they're having to rely on mistakes by Steinmiller rather than capitalizing themselves on good finishes.
It's definitely going to be a hard mountain for these guys to climb going into our last handful of races on the season. The season is coming to a close. We only have a total of 7 races left to go. And those races are Dover, Nashville, North Wilkesboro, the next 3. All those tracks favor Hank Steinmiller. Then we go to Charlotte, the only 1.5-mile track before we get to the final race of the season. That favors drivers such as Christopher Morse Jr. and Cooper Johnson. You have Rockingham, which threw a curveball in. It could go either way for any of these drivers. And the biggest curveball of them all, Road America, with the most dominant driver that used to race in the series, John Whitendorf, not making the starts anymore as much as he used to. That leaves the door wide open for Road America. Who takes advantage there might very well determine who wins this championship by the time we get to Atlanta. It's going to be an extremely hard mountain for these guys to climb, especially now that the championship gap is so wide open.
Yeah, you talk about possible road course driver to win at Road America. If Whitendorf isn't in the field, of course, Christopher Morse Jr. won at Watkins Glen a few weeks ago, so he might be a guy to look at. The question is, though, what kind of races will he have leading up to that? Will he be mathematically still in the hunt for the championship when we get to that road course? And it'll really be interesting to see what the points gap is when these guys get into that season finale at Atlanta. Would we have the same case as we had last season where Morse Jr. going into the finale only had to turn 1 lap, only had to start the race, and he was automatically the champion of the series? Right now, with the consistency we're seeing out of Hank Steinmiller, we could be looking at that case scenario, but still, 7 races, while it is a minuscule number of races left, a lot can still happen in those races, especially with the tracks that we're going to be going to in those 7 weeks. But Steinmiller trying to put the nail in the proverbial coffin of everybody else's championship hopes. We'll see if it's going to be the case as he gets his second win on the season here tonight at Richmond International Raceway. Anthony, it's been a good one here under the lights in your home state. Appreciate you joining me in the booth.
Didn't have to go very far to get to the track today, and that's always fun. And we had some great battling on the racetrack, a fantastic run at the very end of the race, a 2-lap shootout to settle this thing out, and long championship still ahead. I cannot wait to see how this plans out. And thank you for joining me all these races so far. It's been a long one so far.
It has, but it's been a lot of fun, and still got 7 more to go, including next week when these drivers will take to the concrete monster mile for the Mason-Dixon 125 at Dover International Raceway. That'll take place next Tuesday night. Green flag scheduled to fly at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tomorrow night, the Dark Horse Racing Series continue on their 4th season as the Indy cars will take to Chicagoland Speedway. Green flag tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be sure to join us for that. But for Anthony McCurry, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.